In April 1803, Thomas Jefferson, President of the United States, bought 828,000 square miles of land in the west from France. This purchase is known as the Louisiana Purchase, which contained the land past the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains. Shortly after this purchase of the Louisiana Territory, President Thomas Jefferson sent Congress a secret letter requesting them to give $250,000 for the expedition to the West.
Oh dear, I hope Congress will fund this expedition to the West.
This is a very interesting letter from Thomas Jefferson. I think we should fund this expedition of discovering the Western Territory.
Wow, Congress actually is funding this expedition. But who will I send on this dangerous expedition? Oh, how about my dear friend Meriwether Lewis? He could do the deed. For agreeing to lead this dangerous exploration. All your men and supplies are ready to go. Is there anything else you would like to bring with you on this journey?
Well, I was thinking of bringing my old friend William Clark. He's an Army officer, he studies astronomy, cartography, and he's also a recorder and a great map maker.
Why, yes, you can bring Clark along. He would be a great man to bring on this journey with you.
Thank you so much, but I was wondering if I could make him my co-captain.
Sure, but I want you to be prepared. I expect you to encounter woolly mammoths, erupting volcanoes, and a mountain of pure salt. Now, go find a water route across our great North America and explore the uncharted West. Good luck.
On May 14th, William Clark and 48 other men set out to meet up with Meriwether Lewis. They arrived on May 20th.
Blanket, needles, thread, forceps, walking stick.
The Lewis and Clark expedition, called the Corps of Discovery, had begun. The group started to make their way up the Missouri River on a 55-foot-long keelboat and two smaller pirogues. The Clark spent most of his time on the keelboat, charting and coursing the maps, making maps along the way. Lewis was often ashore, studying the rock formations, soil, animals, and plants along the way. The other members of the expedition were on the lookout for Indians and hoping they'd be peaceful, but they were armed just in case that they weren't. For security reasons, Lewis and Clark made camp and posted guards at night. They took turns sleeping. By the end of July, they had already traveled 600 miles up the river and still had not seen a single Indian. August 2nd, a party of Oto and Missouri Indians arrived in Lewis and Clark's camp. This is the first Indian encounter. The encounter went well. Both sides exchanged greetings and gifts. The day of August 20th did not go as well. The first and only member of the corps died during the journey. He probably died from appendicitis. Despite the loss, the expedition continued on. Lewis and Clark had reached the eastern edge of the Great Plains. They were now heading towards the Sioux territory. President Jefferson now had told Lewis that they needed to make a good impression since they were on a powerful tribe. The expedition first encountered the peaceful Yankton Sioux, who were disappointed by the gifts given to them. The gifts were 5 medals. In exchange of the medals, the Yankton warned the expedition with the Teton, who had met further up the Missouri River. The expedition continued up the river and met the Teton Sioux. They greeted them with gifts of a medal, a military coat, and a hat. The Indians did not like these gifts and demanded a vote. Clark drew his sword, and Lewis drew his gun, and before the encounter both sides withdrew. The expedition continued up the river, worried their new enemy was behind them. Winter is quickly approaching, and Lewis and Clark wanted to go as far as possible before the Missouri River froze. The group reached the Mandan tribe's village and planned to spend the winter. They began to build a fort to protect themselves against the winter and attack from the Sioux Indians. Guards were posted around the clock. During the winter, the expedition repaired equipment, traded with the Mandan and Hidatsa tribe Indians, and hunted. Spring came and it was time for the expedition to move on. A fur trapper named Toussaint Trobon helped the expedition by interpreting for them. He lived with the Hidatsa tribe after marrying an Indian woman named Sacagawea. They decided to assist the exploration and travel with them. They brought their baby son named Jean Baptiste with them. Clark sent a team back to deliver the items to President Jefferson, include 68 minerals, 100 botanical specimens, and a map to U.S. They ran into some bad luck. The group came across 2 grizzly bears, and luckily they were able to kill the bears before getting harmed. The expedition almost lost one of the 2 boats when it flipped over the boat. Another stroke of bad luck occurred when the group saw the Rocky Mountains. They see an Indian on horseback. It's a Shoshone. The expedition follows the Indian back to his tribe. "It's my brother!" yells Sacagawea. She runs up and hugs him, and she holds her baby.
The Shoshone's chief is Sacagawea's brother. Sacagawea talks to her brother and translates negotiating for horses. Clark had to give the chief his knife, his pistol, and 100 rounds of ammunition for one horse that wasn't even in the best condition. Food supplies were low and game is scarce. The group met the Flathead Indians and started their journey across the Bitterroot Mountain that took 11 days. This was a tough part of the trip that the men were weak and the horses were sick. The expedition finally made it across the Rocky Mountains. The expedition reached the Snake River and then the Columbia. They met Indians along the shore, and the group ate a lot of salmon. Interestingly enough, Clark had thought they had reached the Pacific on November 7th. For 3 weeks there were storms, rolling waters, and high winds. The expedition made it to the Pacific in mid-November. The group eventually decided they had to spend the winter on the west coast. The expedition made camp south of the Columbia. They cleared a site of trees and brush and built Fort Clatsop that they named after the Clatsop Indians who lived there. Winter making moccasins, clothing, storing food, and working on their journals and maps. A ship did stop to trade with the Indians, but they never told Lewis and Clark about it. Members of the expedition were all keen to go home. Timing was critical. Only when the snow melted were they going to be able to get back across the mountains. "We just don't want to endure another winter on the plains," said Clark. "True," said Lewis. "Let's go." Everyone got up and left. Lewis just shrugged his shoulders and followed. In March, the expedition was ready to return and retrace their steps, so the men went and loaded up their boats. The expedition battled strong currents and had a problem getting around the falls. The Chinookan Indians kept trying to steal the expedition's supplies. There were several times a fight almost broke out. The expedition decided to leave the water and head over the mountains instead. They met a nice tribe called the Walla Walla tribe. They were able to get horses from them to ease the journey. The expedition was now in Nez Perce territory and almost all of the food was gone. "We'll have to wait until the weather improves before we can try to cross the Bitterroot," said Lewis. While the expedition waited with the Nez Perce, the group ate dry fish, roots, some elk, deer, horse, and dog meat. Lewis was hard at work studying nature during the time. He was also busy treating sick members of the tribe as well. The expedition was ready to go in June with fresh horses and restocked food. Lewis and Clark left the Nez Perce and set out in the mountains on June 10th against the tribe's advice. "No, don't leave. You'll need to wait until summer," said the tribe leaders. The expedition began to make their way up the mountains on horseback. It was spring on the plains, but in the Bitterroots it was still winter. They didn't listen to the tribe's warnings and were forced to travel in 10 feet of snow. Eventually they were forced to return to the Nez Perce for help. "We're sorry, you were right," said Lewis and Clark, and the Indians simply responded, "We know." Indian guides led the expedition back up into the mountains. They reached Traveler's Rest. "Let's part ways so we can discover more of the Louisiana Territory," said Lewis. "Sounds like a great plan to me," said Clark. So the two shook hands. Lewis and 9 men would explore the Marias River in the north, and Clark, with the rest of the group, would head for the Yellowstone River in the south. Lewis crossed the Continental Divide with his group. He went off to explore the Marias River. They knew the Marias was dangerous because it was Blackfoot Indian territory. They encountered the Blackfeet, who seemed friendly, and decided to camp together. Lewis's men took turns standing guards through the night. One of the Indians snatched a pair of rifles and a fight occurred. 2 Indians died, so Lewis and his men rode off, worried the Indians were chasing them. "Oh no, let's go, go, go!" While Clark and his group had crossed the divide on July 8th and ended up in the territory of the Crow tribe. The group never saw a Crow Indian, but woke up one morning and discovered half their horses were already stolen. His luck didn't get any better. While out hunting, one of Clark's group members mistaken Lewis for an elk and shot him right in the thigh. Lewis and Clark were reunited and went back to the Mandan villages. Lewis's leg healed soon enough, and on August 17th they said goodbye to some of the group members on the expedition. "Bye, Sacagawea. Thanks so much for all of your help," said Welcome. I will really miss you, said Sacagawea. Take care of yourselves, Clark yelled. They all hugged and cried. The expedition hurried home, going as much as 80 miles a day. On the way, Lewis and Clark began to meet traders. The one trader yelled, "I thought you were dead, and so did everyone else, but here you are alive." "Last I checked," said Clark. Lewis said, "I almost died. Do you want to see my leg?" And he pulled up his pants in a dramatic way. Finally, the expedition had ended in September, 2 years, 4 months, and 10 days after they had left for their exploration. Everybody in St. Louis came out to meet them. The story of the expedition ends here, but I am sure you want to know more about what happened once everyone returned. Sacagawea remained living with her controlling, abusive, and polygamous husband until she died at the age of 24, 6 years after the Lewis and Clark expedition had ended.
Alright.
Thomas Jefferson appointed Lewis governor of the Louisiana Territory. Just 3 years after returning from the exploration, on October 11th, 1809, Lewis died under mysterious circumstances after being shot in the head while staying at the Grinders Tavern in Tennessee. Returning from the expedition, Clark married Julia Hancock and lived in Virginia with their 5 children. He died at the age of 68.